Hey y'all, welcome back to another Apoc Shadow guide, this time featuring the mighty warrior duo of both the rerunning Feixiao as well as the all-new Nikador. As always, feel free to check the description to skip to whatever timestamps you need, submit your clears in the Google form below, or check out the sheet containing everyone's clears if you need some brains to counter this rotation's brawn. Alright, let's get right into it. Starting with Feixiao, her HP has jumped by 40% since her last appearance, or about a 10% HP increase per patch. Girl's been hitting the gym, hot damn. That being said, we do have an arguably much stronger buff on break to match, switching from ult refreshes to a team-wide advance. The favored damage type has also switched from skills and a heavier emphasis on DOT to break damage and a heavier emphasis on elation damage, though as we'll see soon enough, your elation units are much better serviced against the retrofitted Nikador. The older buffs involved a mix of ult focus and dot focus buffs, including the first ult related buff that was often just straight up worse than the third due to not granting weakness break efficiency, which is essential in this fight due to Feixiao being a straightforward wall of 4 toughness bars to break. Now though, we have a new break related buff, which alongside the Dahlia ends up making this stage easier overall for anyone keeping up with the new break investments. Being able to implant weaknesses after all gets past Feixiao's biggest annoyance, which was the fact that all of her weaknesses besides physical were spaced apart such that a blast attack could never hit on element against 3 toughness bars at once. And when you consider that 3 toughness bars are required to break, yeah, it wasn't exactly pretty. We also have a generic crit buff now that favors hypercarry comps, even making room for memo sprites. Remembrance is kind of a multi-DPS comp, so it's not like this buff is specifically made for them, which is nice to see after the slew of hyper-specific AS buffs beforehand that helped memo sprites, and memo sprites only. The DOT buff has also gotten a lot weaker, with each basic or skill upon weakness break no longer triggering DOT, and thus also triggering Hysolence's fishies. Instead, they now just get a generic 30% vuln, which, when considering the previous Feixiao rotation's baseline 25%, pretty much leaves them without a selectable buff compared to last time. Black Swan's Nova Flare does help combat the HP inflation, but still losing constant DOT triggers and having to claw through a 3.2 million more HP every phase does slow them down a bit compared to last rotation, where they essentially got handed a 3894 score on a silver platter. Still a very advantageous matchup for them, but expect their scores to zip a bit. Oh, and the addition of Cyrene means that previous non-DOT or break powerhouses, specifically Anaxa, maul the stage alive now, or at the very least can keep up with the HP spike. Who needs DDD spam when the stage and Cyrene herself give you several back-to-back action advances anyways? Before we get into Nikador's mechanics, let's take a look at the stage buffs he's paired with. The only other noteworthy buff on break that's worth mentioning that I didn't mention on the previous side was the Aha instant upon break, occurring with a fixed 10 punchline. If not running an elation team, this translates to about 5% max HP chip damage against the boss, and obviously scales much harder if you do happen to have any elation characters on the team. Doubling down on the embracing elation is the first selectable buff, with elation damage getting a whopping 15% res pen just for existing, plus 3 extra punchline per war armor break every phase. That's a minimum of 15 extra punchline across both phases, which especially for a 2 elation only team is quite the big deal. The second selectable buff shows some love to our skill DPS, perhaps picking up the slack from Feixiao's previous rotation. While this buff is genuinely nice for skill focused characters like Finon and the Herda, we all know this is just an archer buff. It's a bit of a shame that he and Sparxie are the only skill point hungry DPS, with buffs tailored to them this rotation. Sorry Dylan QQ, but hey, at least Archer's free for, I guess, at least 90% of the people watching this video, and is still right up at the time of this recording if you really want to bring him here that much. And the final buff seems to be tailor-made for both Ashvale and Feixiao, with follow-ups and ultimates making up nearly all of their damage. Makes sense since Ashvale is going to be rate up in less than a week, and the 50% weakness broken condition is even easier to proc versus Nikador's spears due to the war armor mechanics allowing them to be broken absurdly early. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take a look at how tanky Nikador is as a whole first. As for HP, Nikador himself has a bit over 8 million per phase, which is a bit of a tall order considering his status as a mostly single target boss and his war armor mechanics being reduced from his MOC ratios to his pure fiction ones, aka a lot less self damage. The 480 toughness, which is the real scary part though, is luckily not as bad as it seems, as depleting his war armor makes it pretty easy to mostly ignore this toughness bar and break him naturally. You do also get quite a lot of time to wail on him, given his slow 158.4 speed, though CCs outside of cases like RNC's delay will be a lot harder to land thanks to his 50% crowd control res. Man, I sure hope Welt's Nova Flare will fix this so that I can spearhead him against his boss when he reruns. And speaking of such, his Conquer or Be Conquered spears set at a much more reasonable 80 toughness and for 62k HP, which, when you consider how much self-damage they take via war armor, is actually a lot less HP and toughness than even that. Alrighty, I talked enough about war armor and how it's supposed to be critical to breaking and vanquishing Nikador, so let's actually explain what it does. Like the other two versions of the Nikador fight, both war armor and glory exist in tandem, with war armor reducing damage until it's broken by fulfilling a hit count against it, and glory being increased based on ally actions taken and raising your hit count per attack to equal the amount of glory you have. But that's about where the similarities end. For starters, allies gain access to glory immediately at the start of battle, but instead of providing 10% energy regen and a 30% damage buff per stack, capping at 2 stacks, glory only provides 2% crit damage per stack. The trade-off? You now gain 1 glory per every skill point consumed, as well as every pillar either broken or straight up killed, with no apparent upper limit. In other words, attack spam isn't nearly as OP as skill point spam is when it comes to deconstructing Nikador's war armor. Phase 1 has Nikador start with 12, eventually buffing himself up to 25 war armor later. Breaking this war armor will reduce his toughness by 80, deal 3% of his max HP as damage, or about 240k HP, and deal bonus 0.3% for every attack performed while broken. Phase 2 just bumps the war armor up to 99, but to compensate, the reward for breaking is 320 of his toughness instead of the usual 80, meaning breaking it and killing the 4 pillars he spawns for 40 toughness from each spear is exactly enough to break him. To be fair though, it is kinda necessary given how Nikador locks his toughness in Phase 2 until his war armor is broken. Luckily, the spears are much easier to break and kill, having 9 war armor on Phase 1 and 15 on Phase 2. They also have the nasty side effect of buffing everyone's damage by 5% and giving themselves 10% damage reduction per spear, so you really want to kill them ASAP. Breaking their war armor will automatically break them, unlike Nikador who just takes a huge chunk of toughness, and reduce a similar amount of HP and bonus HP per hit afterwards to the big boss man. But since the spears start with a lot less HP, this means that breaking them effectively chunks them for half their health, which is pretty nice when considering that killing them also depletes a bit of Nikador's max HP, as well as a significant portion of his toughness. The math usually works out that in Phase 1, you usually want to take out the pillars due to how much self-damage they take, especially if not running a single target DPS, whereas in Phase 2, they're pretty much mandatory to take out for an optimal Nikador break, save for a very few hyper low AV clears. Oh, and in case you weren't convinced that this stage was pro skill point DPS, each war armor break refunds a skill point. Keep in mind that there is no skill point cap for this stage, meaning that none of the 5 skill points from a full wave of war armor breaks will be going to waste. Yeah, it truly is an SP paradise in more ways than one. Just like the other versions of Nikador, spamming attacks is great, but due to how glory works, being able to consume lots of skill points with those spammed attacks allows you to break war armor at a multiplicatively fast rate. And real quick, pro tip, shout out to Way Forever for showcasing this on his Dr. Ratio clear, you can actually break Nikador right after he kills the spears in order to not have to bother with them while Nikador is weakness broken. As such, you'll almost certainly want to use the Shield Queen Sparxie if looking for a skill point DPS, or the free-to-play King, Archer, and maybe Chingsha if you're desperate or want to be a funny gambling addict. Short of playing Sparxie or Archer, whose 10 to 20 SP consumption limit per turn is seemingly what the stage is designed around, you won't be short on skill points ever, so running turn spammers and or SP positive supports to generate more fuel for your afterburner DPS of choice is very much ideal. You could also just brute force the fight with Mono Rem, Follow Up, or Anaxa if your investment is better there too. Nikador isn't fully immune to getting his toughness bar cracked open like a walnut after all, especially in phase 1, and kills do add to glory, not just consuming skill points, so if you're able to kill fast enough, you may not have to worry about spamming your skill points all the way. Not much to be said about the ideal DPS that hasn't just been said. Seela is an interesting option with how easy the Conquered Spears are to kill, but pre-Nova Flare it does look pretty sus. My guess is that Ashvale will probably take her place in the meantime, as a superior kill-reliant hunt DPS, though technically, who knows, you could just play them together eventually. Dill is great at the whole SP consumption thing, but still lags behind the top consumers, especially if lacking his E2. Aglaia has always been the queen of breaking war armor, but not consuming skill points per attack actually works against her here. Something similar can be said for Firefly, who honestly doesn't match well versus fight mechanics at all, but probably has enough damage to brute force through anyways. Still, I'd much rather use her versus the break favored Feixiao side. I actually do think this fight is about an equal matchup for Archer and Sparxie, despite it being blatantly elation favored to High Heaven. The reason being Archer's much higher attack frequency. Doing the math, dealing 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 9 plus 11 glory per Archer turn, plus another 13 from the ultimate, and then 15 and 17 from the follow-ups equals 63, which results in more explosive growth over time than Sparxie's 20 basic combo into ult into elation skill combo, even if the total of 60 glory is pretty comparable to Archer's turn 1 output. Sure, Sparxie has the AoE advantage, but in single target once the pillars are cleared, Archer is much more efficient per skill point at clearing Nikador's phase 2. Wonder how things will change after these elation buffs disappear, assuming that they do of course, as Sparxie starts to get a more complete team over time to compensate. Could go either way in the Archer versus Sparxie debate over time, not gonna lie. As for support, Sparkle is to this stage what Sparxie is, a near mandatory pick. Considering she's best in slot for both of the top carries, you could even argue that her position is more important. Other than her, other generally solid choices include the likes of Tribi and RMC, as well as Yao Guang for Sparxie of course, and even Sunday due to this stage giving you enough skill points to justify the Sparkle -1 Sunday hyperspeed setup. Ron Mei and the Dahlia also have some niche use cases to speed through phase 1, though generally most players won't find as much of an advantage front-loading their break in exchange for gutting their damage, and probably won't enjoy locking off 2 break supports against the break incentivized Feixiao. Sustains wise, Nikador honestly doesn't have too much to worry about given his low speed. At worst he has a lot of single target attacks, which if you're unlucky enough can focus down your squishy carry and 100 to 0 their HP bar. If you like to mitigate this RNG, Danheng BT and Hyacine are the obvious picks, followed by Lingsha and Aventurine who do a decent job against burst damage too. If you want to double down on SP instead, Gallagher is your good old reliable day 1. If you can't burn your skill points fast enough on the other hand, both Wohuo and Fu Xuan work surprisingly well since their main drawback of occasional to spammy skill point consumption is pretty much negated due to this stage's unique setup. Plus, no one gives energy quite like Wohuo, which is especially nice with the AS buffs and glory providing 0 energy regen, and no one prevents random one-shots like Fu. Heck, she can even tank the big phase 2 AoE now since it isn't based on max HP anymore. Overall, the sustain requirement really isn't much for this stage at all, even if sustainless runs can be a bit susceptible to bad hit RNG. And well, I can only wonder how much better Wohuo will get to perform here after her Nova Flare. Very exciting times indeed. With all that out of the way, let's discuss Nikador's attack patterns real quick. Upon entering battle, Nikador immediately tickles everyone for a bit of damage and energy, applying the glory mechanic instantly and giving himself 12 war armor. His turn 1 is 2 single target attacks, followed by summoning 4 Conquer or Be Conquered pillars with 9 war armor stacks each, regardless of team count this time. Looks like Fion can finally play the game versus him now, though I wouldn't exactly call it the best matchup either. Unlike his MSU counterpart as well, you can aim at whatever pillar you want. There's no bonus damage for hitting any one particular pillar that has your character's face on it or whatever. Turn 2 is a bounce attack, followed by the same weak AoE from the start of battle that resets Nikador's war armor to 25 stacks. Should you fail to break him by turn 3, he then inflicts a massive shared AoE hit that resets everyone's glory to 1, followed by another single target hit. Most teams should easily be able to break him by this time, and so won't have to worry about this soft reset. If you can't, well, I worry for your team's ability to clear this stage at a 3-star pace, to be frank. Phase 2 then has Nikador lock his toughness automatically, even cancelling any mid-action follow-up attacks to really make sure he gets the first move. Rude. Glory also gets reset to 1, and his war armor count resets to 99. Turn 1 has him essentially combine his first 2 turns in Phase 1, performing 2 single target attacks, an AoE, and then summoning 4 spears with 15 war armor each, all back to back. Turn 2 has him repeat this action, but also with the added action of now absorbing any remaining spears, meaning if they aren't killed in the span of a single turn, they get sucked up like Kirby and you'll have to start attacking a fresh new set. Though this does, as mentioned earlier, open up a very small vulnerability period where Nikador kills his spears, and then you can break him before he respawns new ones. Glory does still carry over though between turns, so the redo should be easier. And then turn 3, should you reach it, has Nikador perform another AoE, hitting for slightly harder across a 4-man team, and gaining a bit more power per pillar absorbed than the previous turn. Thankfully, no absurd 120% max HP scaling like his MOC version. So while it looks hecka scary, it's quite the pushover in practice, enough for Fu Xuan to tank it in fact, especially since this is the only thing he does that turn. The glory reset to 1 is annoying, but hopefully by this point you should be on the verge of breaking him. Very straightforward boss who, if anything, just tests your ability to count. Which, knowing the average battle IQ of the gacha player, is less than promising. Anyways, that's all I've got, so thanks for watching. It's nice to have an easier Apoc Shadow rotation this time from what I've been hearing. Although Nikador is arguably similar to MOC's E-Core Memo Sprite in that his mechanics gate out all but a few select units, he's also similar in that one of those cheat codes in the matchup is free, DHPG before, Archer now, and an additional Sparkle if you count her from the selector. As for the other side, Feixiao being a traditional break boss when break got its buff with the Dahlia and the Chrysos heirs got their buff in Cyrene, makes her a nice litmus test for many blast and AoE DPS to measure their total combined toughness and damage output. Faye's lucky that Firefly's Nova Flare comes too late for her to witness it if anything. The only team that got a noticeable nerf matchup wise was DOT, and well, they had a borderline unfair advantage last time and a Black Swan Nova Flare in between, so it really isn't as bad as you think. And if I can get meta for a second, from a content creator's perspective, it's nice to have a straightforward boss to analyze right before Anomaly Arbitration drops next week. Well, see you then I guess. Mecha Pom Pom does not look very friendly, that much I will say. Thanks for watching, and as always, let me know what you think of this Apoc Shadow rotation in the comments below. Have a great day.